General Hickey, we talk about the independent reviews, and those are key in any business that you have, anything that you're running. The question comes in, what do you do with the information that you get? And you talk about getting certification with ISO 9001, which obviously would be a feather in the cap, but there's also from that, I read some about ISO 9004 that makes recommendations on improving what you're doing. So I guess the question I have is, with either method, independent review or outside review like that, like ISO 9001, what do we do with the information? How do we go ahead and institute improvements that make us better?
So, Congressman, I will tell you that at the heart and core of what I bring to the table, and there's a negative side of it, which is a DNA that talks about process improvement. I don't sit on anything. We don't relax. We continue to look for ways to get better and to apply what we've gained and what we've learned. So, by example, we and Mr. Murphy's organization gathers data consistently on the number of errors we make and what we make them on, not different than sometimes what the IG looks at in terms of the way they look for errors. We take an immediately turn when we start seeing a trend line on a particular error where we're seeing a rise in it. We turn that into training immediately. We turn that into conversations with our quality review teams and, in fact, tell them to start looking harder at those issues and to start to make improvements there as well. I've also mandated that we start doing more face-to-face in the morning, we call them huddles, at regional offices. Are
there obstructions in the system, though, that slow you down or prevent you from making improvements in the overall system?
Certainly there are. I made mention of, and I will tell you this is even more significant in the appeals process, and that is the appeals process looks akin, and you all will know this well, to the tax code that's been wired together by law over many, many, many years, and it is hard to unwire it to make any process improvement in it. And so we struggle, frankly, with the appeals process and finding definitive major improvements to make in it. And when I don't have an issue with law, I will sometimes hit a stakeholder vested interest. As we did, for example, on something that should make sense to everyone, which is a standard form that we should have in the application for a benefit. We heard from our stakeholders. They had some concerns about that reference, and it's still in rulemaking, so I can't talk about it, but I will tell you we've heard them, and I'm hoping we will have very early this fall a solution that makes a difference to both.
So you talk about law, and you talk about some blockades, and you talk about trust. Congress is a body that doesn't have the highest approval rating itself, and trust in the American people is sometimes absent there as well, not just within the agency that you're working with. But I'd like to discuss your vision of oversight on the part of Congress, the OIG, GAO, and the VBA itself going forward. I mean, everyone's got a role, but are we actually accomplishing something within our role? In other words, everyone weighs in, but at the end of the day, are we getting something done? Are we making changes?
If I stood from the veterans' perspective, I would tell you that 200,000 veterans this year alone will get answers to claims at a higher quality rate than they have ever gotten before in the history of this organization. So I think you all have made a difference. I think your staffs, when they come and visit us, sure, they put me on a little warning and a little heads up, and I get a little tighter in the way I look at things. When the IG tells me certain problems, then we look to see how we can apply solutions to fix it.
But do you have access going in the other direction as well? You mentioned you're sometimes bound by laws. So do you feel you have access to come back to us and say, hey, can Congress enact some changes so that we can make this better? Here's where I'm bound.
I understand what you're saying, Congressman. I will tell you, I will oftentimes, before I take one step to come to you, find out what my stakeholders might think of my taking that direction and coming to you. And oftentimes, when I won't come to you, is because my stakeholders have concerns about changing the law. They are my partners.
I understand that.
and I don't want to bring you something for which they have little to no support. And I know you all well enough to know you're not going to do anything if we don't have the veteran service organizations.
But I would hope you'd feel free to have a dialogue.
Thank you. I do, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, and I yield back.
Mr. Waltz, you recognize for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all for coming here tonight. And I feel like I've reached an age, Ms. Halliday, where I say things like we go way back. And, and I appreciate the work we've done in the